Hello and welcome to As Built, the podcast from Graphic Machine about architecture firms and buildings and how both get built. I am your co-host, Patience Jones. With me is...
Brian Jones.
You had to think about it for a minute, didn't you?
It's been a long day.
It's a really long day. Thank you for joining us. On today's episode, we are continuing our Growth Challenges series. And what we're talking about today is retirement, which if you're the person retiring, probably doesn't sound like much of a challenge. But for everybody who's left at the firm, it probably is. And as your firm grows, as it ages, as it gets bigger, people will retire. And sometimes it's just one, and sometimes maybe it's a whole swath, depending on how top-heavy your leadership was.
And we're definitely talking about the leadership and not necessarily people who have been with the firm for a long time and retire, which are going to be missed, but probably don't have the same impact on the perception of the firm.
I mean, anybody who's gone through a partner retiring knows that there's a lot of financial behind-the-scenes work that has to happen and administrative work that has to happen. And that is not what we are talking about today. What we're talking about are other challenges and opportunities for keeping the firm going, keeping the clients on board, understanding what any changes mean for them and why they should continue to work with you.
And it's great to think of it as an opportunity because this is one of those key moments in the life of a firm where you can really begin to think, well, what doesn't serve us anymore and what would be better for the firm? And are there changes that we can now make now that this particular person is leaving the firm? It could be that they had a particular specialty or area of expertise, and that's no longer really part of the firm's intellectual property. It could be just a particular style, the way that projects are completed. But there are many ways, and it is worth it to think about it in a really thoughtful way for what it can mean for the future of the firm.
I think that's a really good point. We have seen this in some firms where a partner announces that they're retiring, and what sort of seems to happen is that the rest of the firm continues on in almost like a wounded carcass sort of fashion.
And like, now what?
And they're just never really, they really struggle to regain their footholding, or their foothold. They kind of limp along and there's just this like hole left. And that seems to stem from not looking at this the way that you're suggesting, which is, okay, who are we now? Who are we going to be now? Where do we go from here? What do we want to do? Maybe nothing's changing.
Yeah.
Maybe the person who left really wasn't doing a whole lot by the time they retired anyway.
Well, and you're bringing up a really good point about the manner in which the retirement is announced internally. Because if this is, and I'm not advocating for this, but sometimes it's like, surprise, I'm retiring. And really, for a larger firm especially, it is good to have that regular check-in as far as like what the thought process is so that you can begin to bring people along. Just like anything that you would do for talking about your firm, just make that happen if you can.
I'm just imagining some overzealous firm, like anybody who's over 55 gets a daily check-in. Like, are you retiring soon? Have you thought about retirement? Don't do that.
No.
Don't do that.
No.
But, and I think usually those announcements that are like, I'm out of here, suckers, usually come as a result of some bad feelings. Generally, they tend not to be a surprise. So I think, larger picture, just kind of, as you always should, keep a read on your relationships in the firm and how people are behaving. But assuming that this is not an up and out tomorrow sort of situation, that they have given you some notice that they want to retire, what are some of the things that you need to think about from a let's turn this into an opportunity standpoint?
Well, probably one of the big ones is, is the name being impacted? Is the name of the firm, there are a variety of different naming structures and ways to mitigate that. But that's definitely one of the first ones that's going to be top of mind.
And that's kind of twofold. One is from just a legal and corporate structure standpoint. Are you allowed, if that person's name is in your firm name and they're retiring, are you allowed to keep using their name? And that's something that you'll need to discuss, with your legal advisors and, AIA and all of that, what the requirements are, your insurer. But the other aspect to the naming is, do you want to have that person's name in the firm going forward? If you can, or do you want to take this opportunity to come up with a completely different name or elevate other people in the firm and name it differently?
And there is no one right answer, but it is a good thing to bring whoever's going to be making that decision together and have an open conversation about all these particular factors that are going to play into that.
Yeah, make it a decision. Don't just make it that nobody thought about it, and so you're still calling yourselves X, not for any particular reason, just inertia.
I mean, probably the next one to think about in my mind would be what are the sort of branding and visualization impacts. So you've had the name conversation, and like what are some of the things that you need to consider on that front? And is it time for something to be refreshed in the firm's visual identity?
Well, it's visual identity, but it's also your positioning, your mission statement, why you exist, the kinds of work that you do. All of those things, it's a good opportunity to revisit them. If the person retiring, maybe they were a founder of the firm and the firm has always been really strong in healthcare because of this person, but now you also want to add on an education component. This is a great time to rework your brand so that you are a firm that does healthcare and education.
Well, and you bring up a great point about going beyond just the visualization. And the point of having these conversations now is that maybe the way that things are communicated, the way the structure of the firm works, the way the workflows may be also changing as a result of this exit. And going through a thorough branding effort will walk you through all of those pieces and will make sure that you have a sense of like what's the true impact and loss at this in the firm and how will things change?
Because it will impact everyone in the firm at some level. It's really important when you start to think about notifications that are going out. Yes, you need to notify your clients. Yes, you probably need to make some sort of public announcement that this person is retiring and thank them so much, etc., etc. But you also need to notify the people in your firm. And that notification is going to be a little different because it's going to be more just designed for your internal audience and talk about things like, okay, you used to report to this person, now you report to this person. Or here's who's going to be reviewing the work before it goes out the door. Or we'd like to put you in a different position with more responsibility because now we have these things that are open. And also to reassure people that this person's retirement is not putting their job at risk, is not going to impact their salary if those things are true. If they're not true, and there are going to be other impacts, then you need to convey those as soon as possible to keep people from getting panicked and fleeing.
Well, and the questions that you may, as you're listening to this, that you may be thinking about that are inevitable in that moment. Again, it reinforces the notion that having a thorough session where you've walked through all these things internally before you start having these conversations, because there's nothing worse than being caught flat-footed because you didn't spend the time thinking about what the answers might be.
Even things as seemingly banal as how the offices are configured. I mean, I've been to offices where there's a prominent desk that is empty, clearly empty. The person isn't out for the day. It's clearly empty.
Yep.
And it'll turn out that that desk was occupied by somebody who retired 10 months ago. And it's being maintained as sort of this shrine, which it just has it's just a bad look. And it can make the office feel a little bit mournful and a little bit dead. So the person that's retiring, think about, okay, what physical space in the office do they occupy? Nature abhors a vacuum. How are we going to reconfigure things so that, one, we don't have this gaping hole, and two, that we are reflecting whatever the new office structure is
Yeah.
now that this person is retired.
Well, and think about it again on the opportunity front. Maybe in the last 4 or 5 months before the person is leaving the firm for good, maybe they aren't at that desk anymore, and maybe they're at a more temporary station where people get used to the idea of the transition happening. And that's just one idea, but there are many that could be good resolutions to that problem. But again, it's an opportunity, and why going through all that thought-provoking conversation super important.
And to that end, be sensitive to people too. You may, whatever your personal relationship is with the person who's retiring, and whether or not it exists outside of the office too. Maybe they're retiring, but it doesn't impact your relationship with them because you're still going to see them all the time because you're personal friends. There will be people in the office who will go through their own sort of grieving period because they were close with this person. They got used to seeing them every day, and they're not going to see them anymore. And that's tough. So just kind of be a little sensitive to that.
Acknowledge that there's a change that's happening.
Yeah. And think about, the last thing is parties. Really think about whether you want to have a party. And the most important thing to do is to talk to the person who's retiring and ask them if they want to have a retirement party. Because I have been to retirement parties where the honoree did not want to be there, did not want a party, was deeply uncomfortable, stayed about 10 minutes. Just don't do that. It's the person's retirement. If they don't want to have anything, don't have anything. And if you're not in a position as a firm to be able to have something for them, that's okay too. Just be honest about that. And maybe there's something that you can do. Maybe you can have a happy hour inside the firm for all the employees or something.
So big takeaways here for retirement.
Just have those conversations with the person that's retiring. Be really clear about what the firm's expectations are and what the retiree's expectations are, what their role, if any, will be in the firm going forward, when this is actually going to happen. What kind of acknowledgement do they want? Do they want a party? Have them be involved in creating the announcements. And then think about how it's impacting the rest of the staff, everything from morale to how they do their jobs every day.
I think the only thing I would add to that is you're going to be tempted to skip steps. You're going to think, well, yeah, we know nothing's changing here, so we'll just skip over that. Have the conversations anyway. Even if the end result is that you end up exactly where you thought you were going to be, but 9 times out of 10, there's going to be something additional information that you didn't think about that's going to be crucial and important to shaping things going forward. So don't skip steps.
Don't skip steps, and really, really, really be clear about when the person's last day is. And I know it sounds crazy, but what happens when or if the person decides that they don't want to retire after all, or that they want 6 more months of working before they retire? You don't want to be in a position where you've put out press releases and you've notified all your staff, and then the person comes in and says, in getting ready to retire, I've realized that I don't want to do this. What will you do then? So have a plan in case that happens, because it does happen.
Check in early and often.
Are you retiring? Are you retiring? How about now? That's just going to create a whole host of other problems.
Perfect.
Yes. So we are retiring from this episode. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time.